I think it's going now. Hi guys, welcome to the Finishers and Decorators Forum Podcast. It's a bit of a solo venture today for me because I thought I would get Jamie Bourne, our resident spray guru, on the line, and we could chat a little bit about workshops. So say hello, Jamie, and maybe
Hello.
tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Jamie from the Abode Academy and also Abode Spray Supplies. We run a training academy for spraying in Wiltshire. Yeah, pretty much it really. I've done the job been in the decorating for about 24 years now. Probably spraying for a good 13 of those years. And yeah, it's basically I've left the job nearly left the job, still doing bits and bobs, but mainly doing the training side now and helping people with workshop setups and things like that really. So yeah.
Ideal. I can personally attest to the quality of Jamie's training, as I did attend some myself in UPVC, and I thought it was awesome. We've made quite a good go out of that actually since doing that course, and it's made us a lot of money. So yeah, happy days. And I thought I'd get you on today to have a little chat about workshops because, as some of the people in the forum might know already, then I've been building a workshop out with Arthur recently, trying to get our spray booth up and running. And and obviously we chatted when I was up at your training facility a little bit about a few things that actually ended up helping us out quite a bit. With setting it up and everything like that. So I basically got some questions together, and I thought that it would be cool to give some people a bit of insight, maybe if they were considering getting a workshop together, like things to look out for, maybe, and that kind of thing, really. So how did you get into the idea of having a workshop originally? What got you into thinking about it?
I done a job for a joinery company, and I was painting the windows. This is how I got into spraying originally. So I done a joinery shop, and I was painting the windows by hand, and they were impressed with the work I was doing. So they offered me a bigger job, but it had to be sprayed. So I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely blagged it, made out that I could do it, learned a lot of things, made a lot of mistakes. But it was just being in that workshop environment. Like, every day I used to walk in there, it just used to feel really like, oh, this is cool. Like, imagine if you could have, it was dreamed that was where I was going to be. Like, I wanted this place, and then they offered me a space upstairs, and it all went a bit sour in the end with the people we were working with because they wanted way more out of me than I could give them, and I had my own jobs, and they were sort of. Yeah, and in the end, I just went. I had bits there that I needed to spray, so I was like, well, I got to get somewhere to do it. So I looked about, and the first one I had, mate, was probably the size of a double garage, probably, but I'd say even smaller than that. I set up something a little bit in there, and I cracked on with it. But it was. I just knew where I wanted to go with it, and I think every time I went in there in the morning, it just felt very relaxed because I had no one breathing down my neck. I could move around freely and not worry about mess. I could come and go as I pleased because I was on my own time clock, and I just felt, a relief of. I don't know. It's very hard unless you have a workshop. It's hard to explain to people, but it's just having that freedom and flexibility with hours, because you know what it's like when you're in a client's house, like going to the toilet sometimes even the challenge because they're there. And just having, like, if you finish for the day, you can't do any more, you go home at 3 o'clock, you still feel like they're judging you for doing that. So I think it just escapes all that. And it's a better life. That's as simple as it is. It's a better life. It's more freedom. It's yours. You've done it. It's something to be proud of. So yeah, that's my reasoning for why I knew I wanted to do it. Yeah,
I totally agree with you on all of that, by the way. Living the workshop life now.
yeah,
It's another world entirely, There was a job we were doing a little while ago where we had, you know, it wasn't any fault of our own. It was actually a bit of a bad mix on the paint we were using. And so we were there for a long time, and we were there being a bit frustrated on site. And we were thinking, oh, it'd be so much easier if we had a workshop. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the, you have a mishap of some kind, paint doesn't turn up. It's no big deal. You just crack on with someone else you got there. So, yeah, I've got to agree with you on all that. What do you think would be, or was, sorry, the biggest challenge to getting a unit that was suitable to spray in? Because I know I had a few issues, and I wondered if you had any problems yourself with that.
I mean, the first thing I always say to people, I wish you live and learn, I suppose. When I got my first workshop, I had an agreement with the woman there that said, "Oh, you can do what you want, and you can put this in and that in, and you can go for the roof with the extraction." And then when I actually come to doing it, she said, "Oh no, you're not actually allowed to even put a shelf up." So I spent all this money trying to get things in there, and then in the end I couldn't do anything. So my argument was like, well, it's not a workshop then, so we had to keep moving. And the next one I went to, the bloke was a bit more, sound on the fact that I said to him, well, if I'm going to get this and you're going to tell me this information, I need you to put it in writing. I mean, so this is this. So I learned from the first one, don't just take people's words for it. Get it in writing that you've all got an agreement. This, and even to the point where you're spraying paint, and whether it's solvent, water based, whatever, you need to tell those people, look, I'm going to be spraying paint in here. I need you to, in email, confirm that this is okay. Do you know what I mean? This is what I'm going to be spraying. This is the cost sheets. This is the health and safety. And really, because the last thing you want to do is go into a workshop, spend 20 grand and not be able to use the products you want to use. So just really be careful with that. It's just good. It's good to get an email. I mean, and just don't take someone's word for it, basically.
100%. Yeah, no, there's definitely a difference when you start taking commercial property on. You do start peeking behind the curtain, so to speak, of all the legal kind of stuff that goes alongside it. And even taking on a small unit, there is actually a lot of legal liability involved, and you do have to, cover your own back, basically, when it comes to these things.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely.
Talking of, spending 20 grand, was there any particular unexpected costs that you came across straight away that you hadn't even remotely accounted for, or just any that you'd thought would be small and ended up being massive, or is that everything?
It's always, whatever you think it's going to be, double it. That's my theory. But I mean, there's things that I did at the start, which I didn't do. Do you know what I mean? It was, I wish if I go back, I would say to myself, spend the money. That's the difference, because I had it there. I was just trying to hold on to it to finish it sold. But you got to understand is the more you spend on it, the easier it'll be, the better the finish will be, the less you'll be redoing the work because of contamination. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like I wish I'd spent more straight away to get it right, because you just go backwards all the time, and that every time it just dents your profits every time. But I had, I would say to the carpenter, oh, I've got a budget of like 5 grand, and he'd just laugh and say like, yeah, let's see, mate, and then it'd be like 15. Do you know what I mean? It's like 10 grand over straight away, and it just creeps up. I think you just don't take into account when you're setting up a workshop, and I think in your head you're thinking, oh, just got to get a compressor, some racks and stuff. But those bits add up very fast. That's the difference. So, like, racks, how many do you need? 3. So they're 350 quid each, right? Screw compressor, if you're running an air-fed mask, another 4.5 grand. Spray booth, £4,000. Speed controller on the spray booth, so you can control the airflow. Inlet filters coming into the booth, another 600. It just, 3-stage breathing filter. It just goes on and on and on. It just, and you can do all these things cheaper, but you're not going to achieve that much more by. I mean, like, you might not need a screw compressor because you're not running an airfed. You might be running a piston compressor with just using water base or pre-coat lacquer. I don't know, whatever. If you're not running an airfed, you wouldn't need it. But you're only, it's certain points you're going to have to spend something. I mean, like, you're going to have to get a booth, whether you get that second hand or brand new. That's up to you. So you can, there's things where you could probably cut the cost down by doing certain things, but I'd always advise like whatever you think is going to be, like double it, triple it, and just be prepared for a bigger bill because it. And I think it's scary at the start, but once you get that first, because we were doing sometimes 20 grand a month, jumping in on kitchen. So, if I spent 25 grand on my spray booth, then I'm nearly paid it back in 4 weeks. And then it's just profit and profit and profit and profit and profit. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, if you've watched my Instagram recently, we've done a video exactly about money into a workshop. And it was a student we had in that he was just point blank, no, not spending the money. And we opened the roller shutter door, and he's got an 80 grand G Wagon sat outside. Like, do you know what I mean? And I said to him, when you bought that car, was it just point blank? No. And he laughed instantly because he knew what I was talking about. Do you know what I mean? So I said, if it was me, I would sell the car and invest into the business. The car makes no money, loses money every day.
Loses money, yeah.
So it's just, I think when you've just got to get into that mindset, like money in the bank, like, it doesn't do anything. The only person that benefits is the bank. Money in your company, and invest in yourself. And that's what if I go back to myself all those years ago, that is the advice I would give myself: is don't scrimp. Just get it. If you've got it there, even if you've got to take a business loan, just do it. But equally, make sure you're doing it smartly. Don't just go in and invest in a workshop with absolutely zero idea of how you're going to get it working. Do you know what I mean? Have a plan, but the problem is, like I say to people, is you almost need a workshop before you start putting the feeders out because you've got to have someone to do it. Do you know what I mean? So it is
100%.
The whole thing is a massive risk, but you get out what you put in. That's what I mean. For me, it's. I'm rambling on, but like for me, it's always been I need to pay the bills in the house, so my mortgage is always paid. I have to do it, so there's no option. So if I've got a workshop, I've got to pay for it. I need those jobs to come in. It's like almost like an incentive to do it. Like it's impossible for me not to get the work in there. I have to get it, so I'm going to do it. Even if I'm out at weekends, dropping leaflets off. I have a stand in the town, like showing samples, knocking on joinery's doors. Do you know what I mean? I was selling jobs to the waiter at Nando's. Do you know what I mean? When I was out on Valentine's Day with my missus. Do you know what I mean? But because that's what it takes, because someone else is going to be doing it. That's the point, So
100%. I totally agree with you on that. There is sort of just like a leap you have to take.
Yeah.
And if you take that leap, personally, like I was sort of call this naive or whatever, but I sort of thought to myself, I've never seen somebody with a workshop that isn't doing pretty well. Yeah. Like once they've put that initial effort and taken that jump, I think the opportunities start to stack up better.
But the thing is, like people think you just get a workshop for this is where people go wrong. They're like, what if I don't get any kitchens in? That's all they say. They're not taking into account all the other things that will come into that workshop. So 100%. We were a spray shop. We weren't a kitchen spray factory. We literally sprayed whatever we could spray, mate. We sprayed it. Doing mannequins 100%. For H&M, piano contracts, tiles for a place up on the coast where it was. We had to spray the stuff on the tile to stop it corroding with the salt water. Statues and cocktail signs. It went on and on. Pallet trucks. It was a spray shop, and we just sprayed shit. That was it.
Stuff. 100%. It's that's definitely something we notice. As soon as the doors open, there's people that are like, oh well, they've got a spray booth. They can spray this in there, maybe. Yeah. It's definitely a win. Talking of wins, have you noticed a distinct change in people's you could call it willingness to take up your service based on the merits of having a spray booth in a workshop? So I don't know if you were spraying on site before you got your workshop at all, but okay. Because certainly we came across a couple of situations where it was kind of, we were bidding up against people that had workshops, and they were able to do, their quotes were lower because they weren't on site for as long,
This disagree with that to a point, because I would say that if you've got a workshop, you should be charging more because of how you're
I
doing it.
mean, I do sort of feel that way too, but I don't know if maybe they're still earning more because they weren't having to set up for as long, or you just don't know how it works out in the background, I guess. But
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was always that if you've there's not really much competition around here, because I sprayed for so long, it was like almost like I was the spray man. Do you know what I mean? So it's like that's all. Everybody's just recommend me and pass me around. But there was one guy. I mean, a couple of my students open workshops around here, and they've done all right, to be fair. But again, it's you've got to, there's got to be a reason why they pick you. For me, it's always been like if someone's spraying a kitchen in someone's house, not only are you leaving your customer in a really shit position because they can't use the kitchen, but also, you've got that job might not be suitable for spraying the kitchen in their house. Do you know what I mean? So you might get to a job where there's a massive island in the middle, right? Then you say, well, what's next? Living room? You can't kick him out of the kitchen and the living room. Do you know what I mean? To turn the house into a spray booth. So you've lost the job. You know what I mean? So, and I reckon I would have probably lost 90% of my work over the last 10 years if I didn't have a premises, because it just meant that I could go in there, take the doors away, and then I could do the whole thing off site. But that would have limited my job, massively limited my jobs if I didn't have a space, like 100%.
100% on that, mate. I've got to say, people, I think, assume that it's going to be more of a headache when they inquire about spraying their kitchen.
Yeah.
But obviously, having the workshop available, it really does cut down.
Well, that's it,
the
maybe.
impact on the customer.
I mean, if your customer now comes to you and says, I'm interested in having my kitchen sprayed, you can say, well, come over to the workshop and I'll show you some samples and have a cup of tea. I've never had someone, me and the guy who actually speaking about it the other day, has got a workshop. And he said, I've never had someone come to our workshop and not book a job in, ever.
Well, there you go. It just goes to say, doesn't it? We've had a few drop-ins to the workshop already. I know we haven't been open all that long, but we've had a couple of drop-ins, and yeah, they've been very happy with what they've seen. And we don't really have stellar, seating like you have up on your mezzanine, so it's not quite as comfortable and plush as you've got it. But we've got a coffee machine. We can make some good brews. So. Talking of couches, I'm assuming you didn't start off with a couch. So could you maybe tell us some of the things that have changed dramatically about your setup? Not necessarily in terms of the actual unit changing, but more, maybe things that you thought were set up correctly and you just ended up needing to rip it out and start again, or anything like that.
So the first time I didn't have a spray booth, I had a little stupid fan, that orange tube on the end of it going out of the door, blowing dust all over some poor bloke's car, which obviously didn't go well. That was obviously a bad move. Made a rack out of wood that fell down in the night, and all my doors were very damaged in the morning.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, because I'm trying to be stingy. As I say, that I was saying in terms of the fan as well. Like when I moved into a bigger premises, I put a fan in the workshop, and I just put it. It's called an open face booth. So basically, what you do is you just work around it. It's in the room that you're working in. When you put the fan on, the whole workshop is now a spray booth, right? That's the idea of it. And to be fair, I had a little room where I was putting doors in, and it worked. It was miles away from where I was already, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I moved over another workshop, and then I put the fan and the booth in his own room, and it was just like wow, just instantly wow, like what a difference that made instantly. And then I changed because I got next door, didn't I? I got next door's workshop. We were like, oh, I'll put a dry room on the side now. So this is what I'm saying to you a minute ago. It's taken me 10 years to get here. It's not like this has happened overnight. And I put a dry room on the side, and then it was just like, whoa, like again, like there we go. Because now I can do a job and put it in there, and then carry on with another job because it's out of the way. Do you know what I mean? And
for sure, yeah.
Now when I clean my gun out, if I pull the trigger when it's full of pressure and all the fitters go over the door behind me, Oh, do you know what I mean? This is things that happened when I was literally, you know what I mean? Because I didn't have it. I had it set up and it was very good, but it wasn't like its best. But then as well, coming into the booth where I used to have one way into the booth, right? And that was like for the big double doors. And I, you can imagine the fans on all the kitchen doors in there, and how fast you have to come out of the room to shut the doors behind you because all the dust is flying into the room. So you basically the whole thing was just a nightmare. So when I put the dry room on the side, I had two entries in. So I had the way into from the dry room and the way back out into the main entrance. So it meant I could push everything into the dry room, shut those doors, and then go back out the main entrance of the spray booth, and nothing was getting contaminated because literally everything was out by the time I opened the door in there. So I think that makes a big difference having two ways in. And I always tell people that set up a spray booth, just make sure that you've got a way in and a way out so that you can shut a door somewhere. Because if you the last thing you want to do is spray 30 doors in the kitchen and just open a door up, and just nail every single one. So yeah, but again, this isn't for everybody. And I was saying like it take me 10 years, but I started smaller. Do you know what I mean? And I would never have the room to have a massive spray booth area with a dry room on the side. So it wasn't like it was just like, oh yeah, start here. Everybody that's doing it, do it this way. Start with the open face booth, build up to where you need to be. Unless you've been very lucky with a massive space, then I would go mad and spend the money. But when you're starting out, yes, it is more of a nightmare, but you've got to start smaller, I would say, than bigger. Because if you go big and it all goes to shit, you've had it. If you just start small, because you've got to see the business growing, and you've got to grow with the business. You're still going to get good finishes from doing it the way that I was doing it. Not the stupid little fan though. This is definitely a no-go. With the instruction, open face booth to start, and then move it into his own room, move workshops. We moved 5 times over the last sort of 10 years. So, as you grow, you'll get big. It's like, when you start with a small van when you first start, and then you buy your dust sanders and all your sprayers, then you end up with a big transit, and it just grow and grow. So, but I would definitely start smaller just to get your feet with it, because if you might be the sort of person that's not really asked about trying to go out and get work, and then you might just spend loads of money for no reason. So, it depends. If you're really going to push it, then I would go for something small, but not stupidly small, and then build up your way into the big place.
Well, there you go. Yeah, talking actually did touch on something that I'd written about my next question. Which was essential parts to controlling the dust. Now, obviously, I know you talked in your video about having a prep area, which is very important, separate from which now I know, since I came to your workshop, you now have a drying room, which is cool. Sounds like that's quite an essential part to keeping the dust controlled and working nicely in your workshop. And I guess intake into the booth as well.
Yes.
So I guess maybe I might have missed some, but maybe you could talk a little bit more about how you've got that set up.
Yes, I mean with the prep area, I mean this is again, I mean you've got to have somewhere to prep the stuff. You don't, like I'd say, if you've got the area to prep in and that's your designated area to do all that stuff, then you've only got to keep that area clean, and you just don't want to be bringing that dust into the spray area. It's almost like hitting your head against a brick wall. Do you know what I mean? Again, it depends on the space, how you can do that. But you'd have to, I mean, this is the thing. If you had a workshop with just a spray booth and your bench right next to it, it would have to be immaculate all the time. So you can't just control the dust from just flying around it and just pull it out of gaps, everything. So yes, and again, like I said, it depends on the space you've got. You essentially have to keep everything a lot cleaner because of that reason. If you didn't have a prep room, do you know what I mean? So if you can get one in, even if you put a dividing wall between a booth and something, just to stop the dust going in. In terms of airflow, this is something that again, you need to get right, because if you've got your, so there's two things. There's a spray booth and then there's a speed controller. So when you buy a spray booth, sorry, you won't have a speed controller with it, right? So like they come as a standard. I mean, you can buy that. It's like an add-on basically, which is, they are bloody expensive. I mean, if you pay, back in the day, I paid £2.5 for the booth and £1,000 just for this box that goes on the wall. So they're quite pricey. But the point is, if you haven't got a speed controller on the booth and you're running at 50 hertz and your room is only 3 meters wide by 2 meters long, you're putting way too much air through that booth. Like, so you wouldn't even be able to bring enough air into it. So what happens is you create this vacuum inside, and then every tiny little gap in that workshop, under doors, like every little hole in the wall, it just start pulling into, like I said, we're trying to find air. So what it do is it just start pulling left, right, and center, and that will all be going into the work. I mean, even like the blue filters, you get the square box ones. I've even had it where there's bits of that in the work because it's pulling so hard from the filter. Because so really you need to give it the right speed with the right amount of air. It's like two things that sort of balance that area. Sure. So when you set up, the best thing to do is I would always ring the spray companies and say, like, I've got a 3 meter booth by 7 meters long in this room. How much air do I need coming in? They might say, right, you need 3 meters of air. So you put in your 3 box fans into the roof, which I prefer a downdraft, but again, it depends on the setup and where you can put them. If you have to put them in the wall, then you've got your cross draft. So as long as you've got those 3 meters of air coming in squares, say to that size room, and then you've got another inlet of air coming into the workshop, so you'd have to open a door because again, the whole workshop will then turn into a vacuum. As long as you've got the right air coming in, it won't need to pull anywhere else. It's got comfortably coming through the filters, and that's the only place it will actually come from. So you'll be able to open all the doors in the booth, the workshop, everything with ease. But to know that fan is at the right speed, you want to. How I say, you can use like a gauge, like a fan, like gauge that it's like it tells you how much it's pulling through. But I just go old school, mate, with everything. Smoke pellet, throw it inside the booth, let the whole thing fill up with smoke. And then when you set your speed, you want that smoke to be gone anywhere between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes. That is the gap right here. Yeah. So that 30 seconds is the right airflow, basically. So it's very easy to do. And it's just knowing how much air you need. But the speed controller is the biggest thing you need to buy. That is like, if you haven't got that on there, you're running it flat out. I mean, not only are you putting a lot of strain on the fan, but you're also using shit loads of electric. So you will massively benefit from that speed controller. And again, this is something I didn't do for a good 4 years, and then I did it, and I was like, do you know what I mean? It was like when you buy a dust and sander moment, like that sort of thing.
100%.
Yeah. I honestly, that's the biggest advice I could give anybody on here is if you're setting up a prop booth, like regulate the speed, because it would just kill your fan and it kill your profits as long as you're redoing doors constantly. So it won't work basically. It'd be pointless having a spray booth in that. Basically, I think personally.
Well, I think certainly that's a good insight to how you should be setting it up. I know there's a lot of mixed opinions kicking out there about clearance rates and negative pressure versus positive pressure and what works better. Should you have doors? Should you not have doors on your booth? There's so many questions out there, and I think you could ask 10 people who have workshops and they would have probably wished they did things slightly differently. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, what you've got to understand about it as well is that it's not a car spraying booth. You know what I mean? It's a kitchen, like furniture / bits and bobs spraying booth. Like you can buy a booth for 20-30 grand. You know what I mean? Like it's a proper job. You know what I mean? But do you really need it? No. Like as long as you keep the area clean, you bring in some air, and you make sure your speed's right, then it is quite simple, to be honest. Like it's not like there's no big science behind it. you got some people try and sell you a replacement air unit that blows hot air into the booth and keeps you warm in the winter. Then you sort of say, "Oh, that sounds cool. How much is that?" Oh, it's only 40,000 quid. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, I'll just be cold. Do you know what I mean? Bugger it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna freeze.
Put a
We're
jacket
used
on.
to it here anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the same with the heating, mate. The gas infrared heaters. I mean, again, like £2,500 a panel, and then you got the gas on top of that. And it's not. I don't even know if it's propane or butane. I think it's some weird gas you got to use that dries paint. It's really good for drying paint. I can't remember even what it's called. But again, it depends what you're using. That's why we use a lot of solvents in the workshop, because then even if it's cold, it's still dry. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, 100%.
yeah,
100%.
it's. I think people overcomplicate it, but I just say just keep it simple. Just build it well. Don't build it crap, and just make sure that you're just doing a few things just to make your life easier. Do you know what I mean? Make sure you give yourself enough space. That's actually a good thing that I said that is that the only thing I wish I'd done different even now is my booth's 3 meters wide. Yeah, I wish I'd gone wider. That's what I would say. It's long, but it's not wide. So I would say that it's that distance, the 3 meters, is the size of my booth. So 3 meters wide. So when I get big jobs in like big plinths or big long lengths like bed posts or beds and double beds, and it's very hard to get it in there long ways. It's really close to the wall. So I that's one thing. And again, this would depend on the space. I had the space. I should have gone wider. But I just didn't, because I wanted to just take it to the edge of the booth, Super Leagues, I thought it looked nicer.
Yeah.
Realistically, that would definitely have made it better now if it was wider.
Oh yeah. So that actually leads me on to my next question. What would you do differently this time if you were to set up from scratch, knowing what you know now? What would be the first thing that you would do drastically different to what you already did?
What, even to what I've got now or before?
I mean, to when you started before, if you knew what you knew now, what do you think would be the first glaring mistake that you would fix out the gate?
Find somewhere with a toilet, so you ain't got to walk a mile to go for a shit. That'll be probably the first one. But yeah, I mean, it's I think the biggest one would be having a proper spray booth and not doing it with a fan, because that was, you can imagine how many times I would, and doing it with a different product. I mean, I think I was trying to spray doors of Helmy back in the day.
Oh,
You know what I mean? So I would have been probably straight into the solvents, probably the precats. I mean, but again, you need decent extraction. So paints and fan would have been my main changes straight away, because I think like once you go, do you know what I mean? When you have that realization of trying something different, is and it makes life easier. And it was not that easy. It was still difficult, but it wasn't as difficult as I was making it before. So I would definitely say, if I go back, I would say spend the money on setting up, because I had it. That was the thing. I had the money in the bank, but I had this mindset of money in the bank is better than money in business. That's how I used to think. And I think I tried to hold on to it, which it's quite a common thing. People like to hold on to their money because that's how we've been sort of wired to think.
100%.
If I could go back to myself now, I'd say stop being stingy, spend the money, and reap the rewards. I would have said, because I was busy as well. That's the thing. So yeah,
and it does take a long time. Everything takes a long time. You'd think you'd be able to go in, crack the booth together, start spraying, but it's never that simple. It takes a lot of man hours and a lot of evenings trying to fit it in around doing work to pay the rent. So
I've slept to a workshop late some nights.
Yeah.
And it will happen. That's growing a business in the day. It does. And there's one thing I will say before we sort of finish, and that is like, and this is a true story. I'm not even ashamed to admit this, but I had cancer a few years back, probably, Christ, 3 or 4 years ago, because I'd become obsessed with the job, like in workshop, like everything was like getting over the top of my head. And I was driving back at 2 o'clock in the morning, like just to stare at a door in my dressing gown. That's how bad it was. I mean, my missus would wake up in the night and I'd be gone. I'd be just down there, like, trying to mix up more paint, spray again. And then I was trying to sand it too fast because it was still going off. I was trying to fix it. And then you would see something as you walked out the spray booth, like a little bit of the work or something. But you'd take that home with you, that bit home. And then I'd be bathing, say, your kid. And you'd be going, oh, do you know, that bit is in the way, and you was not really with the people in your family. You were just completely gone. And my missus used to say, just bugger off back down the workshop because you're not here, are you? Do you know what I mean? Basically, and I'd just go back down there. And it's a mental game. Like this job is a mental game. Like having a workshop and having a kitchen spraying is. I can tell you now, there's people on here listening to this will go through the same thing, the perfect finish, trying to get everything perfect. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's not real. This life is not real. Like you can only do what you can do. And my advice is that when you finish the job, just walk out the door. Don't even look at it. Look at it tomorrow. Look at it tomorrow. Worry about it tomorrow. That's what I always say, because tomorrow it'll be dry. It'll look different. And it's just something that I think this. Like anything finishing like that spray finishing is just because when you brush and roll, no one cared that much, did they? Let's be honest. It looked good, but if you had a speck in a brush finish, it was like it was allowed. But now you're spraying, it's like everything's perfect. It's got to be perfect. It's like this is what it does to your head, and kitchens especially. It's just like the mentally the worst thing you can probably do if you haven't got. If you haven't got the right mindset from day dot. Because there's people out there that give out the impression that I've done this with this guide coat and I put this on, I've done that, and then look how amazing this finish is. But they're not showing you the shit they went through to get there. They didn't show you the contamination, the grease in the doors, the fucking woman complaining because she wants to get all the shit that's going on. They're just going, look at this amazing door I sprayed. You know what I mean? It is the reality of it is not like that. It's not. It's a bloody nightmare.
Yeah, I gotta say, there's a lot more to this than I think people think, and it's not all rosy being in a workshop. It is nice. There are lots of advantages, and there's lots of ways that it makes your life less stressful, but it also adds some stress too.
I mean, that's the thing. But it's your stress. That's it. It's your stress. It depends how you deal with it. I mean.
Yeah, but I would agree with you on the taking stuff home. We've got a curtain in front of our drawing room, so that you can't see it as you leave, which I think is actually quite a nice thing. It's black, you can't see through it. So it's
with that as well though. It's like if you do look at it before you go, you will take it home. But what would you do anyway? That's the point. Like you can't. It's too wet. You've just done it.
Yeah.
You can't anyway. But what it's like when you see we used to roll gloss doors outside, didn't you? And you get like a run, and you should leave it in your head. Don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole door's plugging. So it's like it's just the nature. It is the nature of the job. But
yeah, I agree with you. There is nothing you can do about it, but it doesn't stop you stressing about it at home. And just crossing your fingers that maybe it's not too obvious the next day, whatever it is.
I think the best thing I did was, and then what I learned to do was that I wrapped the job up and then look at it briefly as I was doing it. And if I found something that I was like, okay, and I put it back together. And then if I could find the thing that I was worried about again, then I'd redo the bit that I was worried about. Do you know what I mean? Because half the time you're looking at something and it's so stupid. Like that, I'm talking like the speck. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's a speck on the corner of a door at the bottom, and put it back together. And I'm like, that door that I was worried about was in a dark corner somewhere at the bottom. You got, this is what I mean. I'm not saying leave it covered in crap, but I'm just saying there's got to be a point somewhere where you go, it isn't perfect. It's amazing. It looks great, but that's it. It's not. It doesn't exist. That's what I mean. I think it's just. And these jobs you see on the internet, the Instagram, no one's work looks that perfect. It doesn't. If you've seen it in person, there'd be things wrong with it. That's it.
100%. You don't see many shots from the side with the light coming towards it, do you? So,
no.
But yeah, any sort of just before we wrap it up, any sort of final thoughts? Any advice you want to give anybody who's thinking about getting a workshop, or any sort of words of wisdom just about just business in general, whatever you want to say to someone,
I would say if you're serious about doing it, don't just think about it, crack on with it, because it's, at the end of the day, it's something you always regret not doing. Also, if you're taking it seriously, then I would say samples, like having samples on you all the time, like no matter where you are, in the car or in the van. I mean, I've always got them in the car and in the van, like UPVC window and a kitchen door all the time. I never was without one. Because at the end of the day, we sold jobs in Sainsbury's car park to people. Do you know what I mean? It was just the way that I would do it. But it's having that with you, because half the time people think that you're talking about spraying with an aerosol can. Do you know what I mean? This is the people we're dealing with. So if you show them a door that you've sprayed, show them one side that's old, show them the other side that's new. We had so many bookings from doing that. But it's because you constantly. I don't see it as a job. I just like the marketing side. I just see it as a bit of fun. Like I love talking about it, as you can tell. So shut up. But but like it's just, to me, it's just like it's a buzz to get someone come down to the workshop and get selling that job. I think you just got to love doing it. Don't see it as work. Enjoy the process. Do you know what I mean? The whole thing is the bigger picture is going to be an amazing life for you and your family. You're going to make shitloads of money. You can have a lovely car. You're going to go on nice holidays. And you'll make more than you ever have being just a normal decorator, or anything in that space. So for me, it's like, be excited about it. Get buzzing for the moment that you're about to change you and your family's life, because that's what it did for me.
Mate, you're making me want to get in the workshop and start spraying. Come on, baby. God, you've got me hyped, man.
Man, come on.
Oh, that was an inspirational speech. Well, listen, Jamie, thank you for coming along. It's been really cool to chat shop, and we should definitely do it more often. I think I'll probably end up having some questions for you over the next few weeks, because we're sort of tweaking things,
Whereabouts are you? How far are you from this?
We're in Plymouth.
Oh, it's not too far then.
Nah, it's not too bad. I mean, I think it took me about 2 hours to get to you when I drove up to your place.
Yeah, well, mate, we'll arrange it. Maybe we'll come down, mate, see you.
Yeah, do it.
Have a goose. So it's like.
Yeah. Why not? It's a nice part of the world down here,
Yeah, I have been before, mate, but it was on a few drinks, stag do, so I don't remember much of it, I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's generally why most people travel here. So, but yeah. Now, listen, Jamie, thanks for coming, mate, and it's been real interesting to hear your side of things, and I'm sure it'll help somebody.
I hope it helps somebody along their journey. And like I said, if anybody on here wants to reach out to me personally, then I'd always be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, for sure. Just why don't you plug your Instagram and your Facebook page while you're here, etc.
So it's a Bode Academy Instagram, Bode Academy Facebook. You can always follow us on LinkedIn. We're also on TikTok, the same Bode Academy. So I think that's pretty much where we are. We got Fred's, but I don't even know what that is. My missus.
I'm still yet to start mine up, actually.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's annoying. It annoys me because that means I've got to do more stuff. So
yeah, it's just one more place to post everything in it. So listen, thanks for coming along, mate, and we'll wrap it up here. But I'm sure we could chat more in the future, mate.
Yes, no worries, mate.
Thank you, buddy.
Cheers, mate.
And thanks, guys. Thanks for listening, and we'll come out with a new episode again soon. Thanks for watching.